Long ago, in the land of Umuagba, there lived a hunter named Okoro. He was tall, strong, and very proud. Every evening, when the sun began to set, Okoro would return from the forest with animals hanging from his shoulders. The villagers would gather around him, clapping and cheering. "Okoro the Great! Okoro the Mighty!" they would shout with joy. Their praise made his chest swell with pride. He loved the way children danced around him, and women smiled at his success. But one fateful evening, everything changed. The forest was different that day. Too quiet, too still. The birds did not sing their usual songs. The footprint of animals had disappeared like they were never there. Okoro walked deeper and deeper into the bush, his spear ready in his hand. His eyes searched every corner, every shadow. Hours passed slowly. Sweat poured down his face and back. His stomach growled with hunger. But still, he found nothing. Not even a rabbit. Not even a bush rat. As darkness began to fall over the trees, fear entered his heart. Not fear of wild animals or danger. No, it was fear of something worse. Shame. Okoro stopped walking and leaned against a thick tree trunk. His breathing was heavy. His legs were tired. He looked at his empty hands and whispered to himself, "How can I go back with nothing? What will the people say about me?" He could already hear their voices in his mind. The young men would laugh and point fingers. The women would whisper behind his back. The children would stop dancing around him. His reputation, built over many years, would crumble in one evening. "No," he said firmly, shaking his head. "I cannot return empty-handed. I will not face their mockery." So even though night was coming fast, even though his body begged for rest, Okoro pushed forward into the darkening forest. The shadows grew longer and darker. Strange sound began to fill the air. Owls hooted from distant trees. Crickets started their evening song. The moon began to rise, casting silver light through the palm leaves. Just as Okoro was about to give up completely and accept his shame, he heard something, a soft sound, like music floating on the wind. It came from the direction of the river. His hunter instincts awakened immediately. He gripped his spear tighter and moved quietly toward the sound. Okoro crept to the tall grass like a leopard stalking its prey. His feet made no sound on the forest floor. Years of hunting had taught him how to move like a shadow. The sound grew louder as he approached the riverbank. It was not the sound of an animal. It was something else. Something that made his heart beat faster with curiosity. He reached a cluster of thick palm trees near the water's edge and hid behind them. What he saw next made him freeze completely. His eyes widened. His mouth fell open. His breath stopped in his chest. There, near the river, moving in the moonlight, was a long green snake. But this was not an ordinary snake. It was massive, beautiful, with scales that shimmered like precious jewels. The snake moved with grace, almost like it was dancing. Okoro watched, unable to move, as the snake reached the water's edge. Then the impossible happened. The snake began to shed its skin. Slowly, piece by piece, the scales peeled away, and from inside the serpent form, a woman emerged. Okoro's heart pounded so hard, he thought it would burst from his chest. The woman was the most beautiful thing he had ever seen in his entire life. The woman stood at the river's edge, completely unaware that anyone was watching her. Her skin glowed in the moonlight like polished bronze. Her hair was long and black, flowing down her back like a waterfall of midnight. She moved with such grace that even the water seemed to bow before her. She stepped into the river slowly, and the water welcomed her like an old friend. She began to bathe, scooping water in her hands and pouring it over her shoulders. Then she started to sing. Her voice was sweeter than any flute Okoro had heard at village festivals. Sweeter than the birds at dawn. Sweeter than anything on earth or in heaven. The song had no words that Okoro could understand, but it filled his heart with strange feelings. Joy and sadness mixed together. Longing and peace at the same time. Okoro remained hidden behind the palm tree, his eyes fixed on her. His mind raced with thoughts. Is this a spirit? A goddess? How can such beauty exist? He had heard stories from the village elders about river spirits and forest beings that could take human form. but he had always thought they were just tales to frighten children. Now, seeing this with his own eyes, he knew the stories were true. As Okoro watched, thoughts began to form in his mind. Dark thoughts, selfish thoughts. If I could take this woman home, he whispered to himself, the entire village would bow before me. No man in all the land has ever had such a beautiful wife. They would forget all my failures. They would speak my name with wonder forever. He remembered the empty-handed shame he had felt just moments ago. Now, before him was something far greater than any animal he could ever hunt, a prize beyond imagination. But how could he capture her? She was not an animal to be trapped or speared. She was a spirit being, powerful and magical. Then Okoro's eyes fell on something lying on the riverbank, the snake skin. It lay there like an empty garment, glistening in the moonlight, and suddenly Okoro understood. That skin was her true form, her home, her identity. Without it, she could not return to her spirit world. Without it, she would be trapped in human form. A wicked plan formed in Okoro's heart. His hand began to sweat. His breathing quickened. A small voice inside him whispered, "Do not do this. This is wrong. This is dangerous." But the voice of pride and desire was much louder. The woman finished bathing and began to play in the water, splashing like a child. She was completely at peace, completely free, completely unaware of the danger watching her from shadows. She dived under the water and came up laughing softly. She picked flowers that floated on the river's surface and tucked them behind her ear. Okoro saw his opportunity. The woman had turned her back to the riverbank and was swimming toward the deeper water. His heart pounded like a war drum as he made his decision. Moving quickly and silently, he stepped out from behind the trees. He crossed the distance to the riverbank in just a few steps. His hands reached down and grabbed the snake skin. The moment his fingers touched it, a strange sensation ran through his body. The skin felt alive somehow, smooth and cold, but pulsing with energy, with power, with something ancient and sacred. For just a moment, doubt filled his heart. "Put it back!" His conscience screamed at him. "This is not yours to take. You are stealing something precious." But Okoro's pride was stronger than his conscience. He quickly stuffed the snakeskin into his hunting bag and tied it closed. Then he ran back to hide behind the palm trees, his heart racing, his hands shaking. Minutes passed. The woman continued playing in the water, unaware of what had just happened. She dived and swam, completely free and happy. Then, finally, she began to make her way back to shore. She walked out of the water, her body dripping with silver droplets that caught the moonlight. She picked up the flowers she had gathered and hummed softly to herself. Then she reached down to where her skin should be. Her hand touched only grass and dirt. She froze. Her humming stopped. Her whole body went rigid with shock. "No!" she whispered softly. She dropped to her knees and began searching frantically through the grass. Her hands moved quickly, desperately, searching every inch of the riverbank. "No, no, no," she repeated, her voice growing louder, more panicked. She searched the bushes. She searched the water's edge. She even waded back into the river, feeling along the muddy bottom. But it was gone, completely gone. Her snake skin had vanished. Tears began to stream down her beautiful face. She understood what this meant. Without her skin, she could never return home, never transform back into her true form, never swim in the deep waters where her sisters lived. She was trapped in this human body, trapped in this world, forever. The woman collapsed by the river, her body shaking with sobs. Her cries echoed through the forest, filled with pain and despair. She pulled at her hair and beat the ground with her fists. "Who has done this?" she cried out into the darkness. "Who has taken what belongs to me?" The forest gave no answer, only the sound of crickets and the flowing river. She looked up at the sky and called out in a language Okoro did not understand. It sounded like she was calling for help, praying to the spirits of water and earth. But no help came. She was alone, abandoned, stolen from her own life. Okoro watched all of this from his hiding place. A tiny part of his heart felt guilty. He saw her tears and heard her pain, but the larger part of his heart felt triumph. He had succeeded. She was trapped now. She would have to depend on him. After letting her cry for several more minutes, Okoro decided it was time. He straightened his wrapper, adjusted his hunting bag to hide the stolen skin, and stepped out from behind the trees. He walked toward her slowly, his face arranged to show surprise and concern. "Beautiful one," he called out gently. "Why do you cry so bitterly? What has happened to you?" The woman's head snapped up at the sound of his voice. Her eyes, still wet with tears, locked onto him. For a moment, hope flickered across her face. "You," she said, her voice trembling. "Did you see anyone here? Did you see someone take something from this place?" Okoro shook his head slowly, his face showing nothing but innocent concern. "I saw no one," he lied smoothly. "I was hunting in the forest and heard your crying. I came to see what was wrong." The woman studied his face carefully, searching for any sign of deception. But Okoro had practiced deception many times in his life. His face showed only kindness and worry. "Something precious was stolen from me," she said, her voice breaking. "Something I cannot live without." "What was stolen?" Okoro asked, pretending ignorance. The woman hesitated. How could she explain to this human that her snake skin had been taken? How could she reveal her true nature? The laws of her kind forbade such revelations. "It is difficult to explain," she finally said. "But without it, I am lost. I cannot return home." Okoro moved closer and knelt beside her. He could see her shivering in the night air. Her human body was not as strong as her snake form. "Beautiful one," he said gently, "the night grows cold. Dangerous animals walk these paths when darkness falls." The woman wrapped her arms around herself, trying to stop shivering. She looked around the dark forest, and fear entered her eyes. In her true form, she feared nothing. But now, trapped in this weak human body, everything was dangerous. "You cannot stay here alone," Okoro continued, his voice full of false concern. "Come with me to my village. You will be safe there. You can rest, eat, and regain your strength. Tomorrow, when the sun rises, I will help you search for what you lost." The woman's eyes searched his face again. She desperately wanted to believe him. She had no other choice. She was vulnerable, exposed, and completely alone. "You promise to help me find it?" she asked, her voice small and frightened like a child's. "I promise on my ancestors," Okoro lied, placing his hand over his heart. "Tomorrow we will search together. I know this forest well. If something is here, we will find it." The woman looked back at the river one last time, the water that had been her home for countless years. A single tear rolled down her cheek. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. "I have no choice but to trust you." Okoro helped at her feet. Her hand was cold in his, trembling like a captured bird. As they walked away from the river into the dark forest, the woman kept looking back, hoping somehow her skin would magically appear. But the riverbank remained empty. The journey to Umuagba village was long and silent. The woman walked beside Okoro like someone in a dream. Her feet stumbled over roots and stones because she was not used to walking on land. Okoro had to catch her several times to keep her from falling. "What is your name?" Okoro asked as they walked. The woman was quiet for a long moment. Finally, she said, "I have no name that your tongue can speak." "Then I will give you one," Okoro said. "I will call you a wheel. It means precious jewel." The woman said nothing. She just continued walking, her eyes distant and sad. When they finally reached the village, it was very late at night. Most families were already asleep, but a few people who were still awake saw them. Their eyes went wide with shock. They had never seen such a beautiful woman. Where did she come from? Who was she? Word began to spread immediately, even in the dead of night. By the time Okoro reached his compound, several curious neighbors had gathered, whispering and pointing. "Okoro, who is this woman?" one old woman called out. "I found her lost in the forest," Okoro replied. "She has nowhere to go. I have brought her here for safety." The neighbors whispered louder, their voices filled with suspicion and wonder. Okoro led the woman to a small, empty hut in his compound. It was a hut where he kept his hunting tools, but he quickly cleared it out. "You will stay here tonight," he told her. "Tomorrow we will talk more." The woman entered the hut slowly and sat down on the mat he provided. She looked around at the mud walls and thatched roof with empty eyes. This place felt like a prison. "Rest well," Okoro said, and closed the door behind him. But the woman did not rest. She sat on that mat all night long, staring at the walls, tears running silently down her face. She thought about her sisters swimming in the deep river. She thought about the freedom of moving through water without effort. She thought about her stolen skin and wondered who had taken it and why. Outside, Okoro could not sleep either. He lay on his mat, his heart pounding with excitement and guilt. He reached into his hunting bag and pulled out the snake skin. Even in the darkness of his hut, it seemed to glow with a faint light. He stared at it for a long time, running his fingers over the smooth scales. "She must never find this," he whispered to himself. "Never." He looked around his hut, searching for the perfect hiding place. Under the mat? No, too easy to find. In the wall? No. Someone might see him making a hole. Then Okoro's eyes moved upward to the roof of his hut. The thatched roof was thick, with many layers of dry grass and palm leaves. The rafters were hidden deep inside the thatch. "Perfect," he whispered. He waited until he was sure everyone in the village was asleep. Then, very quietly, he climbed up onto his roof. The old thatch creaked under his weight, but it held. He carefully pulled apart some of the layers and found the wooden rafters underneath. He wrapped the snake skin in a piece of old cloth to protect it. Then he tucked it deep among the rafters, pushing it far back where no one would ever think to look. "There," he said softly, climbing back down. "She will never find it now. She will have to stay with me forever." He lay back down on his mat, and this time, sleep came easily. He dreamed of the villagers praising him for bringing home such a beautiful wife. The next morning, the entire village was buzzing with news. "Have you seen her? She is like a spirit. Where did she come from?" The elders gathered early and came to Okoro's compound. They stood outside his door, their faces serious and concerned. The oldest elder, Papa Obi, called out in a loud voice, "Okoro, come out. We must speak with you." Okoro came out, rubbing his eyes as if he had just woken up. "Yes, elders? How can I help you?" Papa Obi stepped forward, leaning on his walking stick. His old eyes studied Okoro carefully. "We have heard strange news," he said slowly. "You brought a woman from the forest last night. A woman of great beauty. A woman no one has ever seen before." "Yes, Papa," Okoro replied. "I found her lost near the river. She was alone and frightened." "Lost?" Another elder questioned. "What village does she come from? What is her family name? Who are her people?" Okoro had prepared his answers. She could not remember. "Papa, I believe she hit her head somehow. She remembers nothing about her past or her family." The elders looked at each other with doubt written on their faces. "A woman that beautiful," Papa Obi said slowly, "and she remembers nothing? This is very strange. Okoro, very strange indeed." "Perhaps the gods sent her to me," Okoro suggested, keeping his voice humble. "Perhaps it is my destiny. Or perhaps," another elder said darkly, "she is a spirit in disguise. We have heard tales of forest spirits who appear as beautiful women to trick men." Fear flickered across Okoro's face, but he hid it quickly. "She is no spirit," he said firmly. "She is just a lost woman who needs help." The elders stood in silence for a long moment, watching him. Finally, Papa Obi spoke. "Very well, but we will be watching." Days passed, and the woman remained in Okoro's compound. He brought her food and water every day. He spoke to her gently, asking questions about her past. But she would only shake her head sadly and say, "I remember very little." This was partly true. She remembered everything about her true life, but she could not speak of it. The ancient laws of her kind forbade revealing their secrets to humans. Okoro decided to give her the name he had chosen. "Your name is a wheel," he told her one morning. "It means precious jewel, because that is what you are. A wheel." The woman repeated the name softly, as if trying it on like a new garment. It did not fit her spirit, but she had no choice. "Yes," she said quietly. "I am a wheel." As more days passed, Okoro began treating her like she already belonged to him. He told people she was his new wife. He made plans for a proper wedding ceremony. A wheel protested weakly. "I cannot marry you," she said. "I do not belong here. I must find what I lost." But Okoro was always ready with smooth words. "You are alone in this world," he would say. "You have no family, no home. Where will you go? What will you do? Here with me, you'll be safe and cared for." 2 weeks after arriving in the village, the wedding ceremony took place. The whole village gathered in Okoro's compound. Drums echoed through the air like thunder. Women danced with rattles tied around their ankles. Children clapped and sang wedding songs. Food was plentiful. Palm wine flowed freely. Everyone celebrated except the wheel. She sat quietly through the entire ceremony, her face beautiful but empty. Her eyes stared into the distance, seeing nothing. When the elders poured libations and blessed the marriage, her heart felt like a stone in her chest. When Okoro held her hand and smiled at her, she felt nothing but sadness. That night, as a married woman, a wheel lay on her mat and wept silently. She felt like a bird trapped in a cage, a fish pulled from water and left to die slowly on dry land. Outside, Okoro celebrated with the men, drinking palm wine and accepting their congratulations. "You are truly blessed, Okoro," they said. "No man has ever had such a beautiful wife." Okoro smiled proudly. He had succeeded. The shame he felt that day in the forest was completely forgotten. Now he was the most envied man in Umuagba. But while Okoro celebrated, he did not notice a shadow of anger in his first wife's eyes. Ngozi had been Okoro's wife for 5 years before Wheel arrived. She had cooked his meals faithfully every day. She had washed his clothes until they were spotless. She had kept his compound clean and organized. She had given him her youth, her strength, and her devotion. But now she was invisible, forgotten, cast aside like an old broken pot. Okoro's eyes followed only a wheel now. When a wheel spoke, even though she rarely did, Okoro would stop everything to listen. When a wheel needed anything, even small things, Okoro would rush to provide it. But when Ngozi spoke, Okoro barely heard her. When Ngozi needed something, he would grunt and wave her away. Jealousy began to grow in Ngozi's heart like a poisonous plant. At first, it was just a small seed of hurt. But day by day, watered by Okoro's neglect, it grew larger and larger until it consumed her completely. She tried at first to befriend a wheel. "Sister," she would say with a forced smile, "let me teach you how our husband likes his food prepared. He prefers his soup thick, not watery." But everything a wheel touched turned out perfect without any teaching. Her food tasted better. Her cleaning was more thorough. Even her silent presence was more pleasing than Ngozi's constant efforts. The villagers began to compare them openly. "Poor Ngozi," they would whisper. "She works so hard, but she is like a candle next to the sun." Ngozi's jealousy turned dark and twisted. She began to watch a wheel constantly, studying her every move, searching for weaknesses or secrets. She noticed strange things. A wheel never seemed comfortable in the village. Her body moved wrong somehow, as if she was not used to walking on land. Her eyes always drifted toward the river, with deep longing. At night, Ngozi could hear her crying softly through the thin walls. Sometimes, she heard a wheel whispering words in a strange language that sounded like flowing water. What is she hiding? Ngozi wondered constantly. Why does she stare at the river like someone who has lost their home? One afternoon, Ngozi was sweeping the compound when she saw something that caught her attention. Okoro was acting strangely. He kept looking around nervously, checking to see if anyone was watching. Then, when he thought no one could see, he climbed onto the roof of his old hut. Ngozi pretended to continue sweeping, but she watched him carefully from the corner of her eye. She saw Okoro pull something from his bag, something wrapped in old cloth. He looked around once more, then tucked it deep into the rafters of the roof. His hands moved quickly, hiding it carefully in the thatch. Then he climbed down and walked away, looking satisfied. Ngozi's heart raced with curiosity. What was Okoro hiding? Why was he so secretive about it? That night, when the entire village was asleep and the moon was bright, Ngozi made her move. She crept silently from her hut and approached Okoro's old storage hut. The compound was completely still. Even the dogs were sleeping. She climbed carefully onto the roof, trying not to make any sound. The old thatch creaked softly under her weight, but no one stirred. She reached into the rafters, feeling carefully with her hands. The dry grass scratched her skin, but she kept searching. Then her fingers touched something different, something smooth and cool. She pulled it out slowly, carefully. In the moonlight, she could see it clearly. A snake skin, old but perfectly preserved. The scales still shimmered with an otherworldly light, even in the darkness. Ngozi gasped and almost dropped it. Her hands trembled. Her mind raced with confused thoughts. What is this? Why does Okoro keep a snakeskin hidden on his roof? She turned it over in her hands, examining it closely. It was too large to be from any normal snake. The scales were arranged in patterns she had never seen before. Then, like lightning striking her mind, understanding came. The mysterious, beautiful wife who appeared from nowhere. The constant longing looks toward the river. The strange way she moved. The sad eyes that held ancient secrets. She is not human, Ngozi whispered into the night. She is a snake spirit. Ngozi sat on the roof, holding the snake skin, her mind racing faster than her heart. Fear and anger mixed together like poison in her blood. Her first thought was to scream, to wake everyone, to expose a terrible secret. But then another thought came. Revenge. If I reveal this now, she thought, her hands clutching the skin tighter. What will happen? Okoro will be shamed, yes. The elders will be angry. But a wheel will simply take her skin and leave. She will be free. She will escape. No, I want her to suffer first. I want her to know the pain I feel. I want her to be trapped and helpless and desperate, just like I am now. A cruel smile crossed Ngozi's face in the moonlight. She had power now. Dangerous, dark power. Carefully, she wrapped the snakeskin back in its cloth and placed it exactly where she had found it. She climbed down from the roof and returned to her hut, but she could not sleep. Her mind was already forming plans. The next morning, Ngozi's behavior changed completely. She became sweet to a wheel, smiling warmly whenever they met. But her words carried hidden thorns, sharp and poisonous. When a wheel walked past in the compound, Ngozi would say loudly enough for others to hear, some people's true clothing sleeps above their heads. A wheel would stop, confusion crossing her face. Sister Ngozi, what do you mean by that? Ngozi would smile innocently, her eyes bright with false kindness. Oh, nothing, sister. My mouth just plays with words. Do not mind it. The cryptic proverbs continued day after day. When rain leaked through the roof of Okoro's hut, Ngozi would laugh and say loudly, see how even the roof cries. It weeps because it holds what should be crawling on the ground, not walking on two legs. The other women in the compound would giggle, not understanding the meaning, but a wheel would feel a cold chill run down her spine. Another time, when they were at the stream fetching water, Ngozi said, some creatures can never be happy on dry land. No matter how beautiful the cage, a fish will always dream of water. A wheel's hands trembled, and she almost dropped her water pot. These words felt like arrows aimed directly at her heart. Someone knew. Somehow, someone had discovered her secret. Weeks passed, and the proverbs became more frequent, more pointed, more cruel. A wheel spirit began to break under the weight of them. She could not eat properly. She could not sleep without nightmares. Her beautiful face began to look thin and haunted. During the day, she would find herself walking toward the river without thinking, pulled by an invisible force. She would stand at the water's edge, staring into the depths, her whole body aching with longing. Take me back, she would whisper to the river. Please take me home. But the river only flowed past, offering no comfort, no answers, no escape. One day, during the festival of the new moon, a wheel went to the village stream to fetch water. It was a bright afternoon, and many women were gathered there, washing clothes and talking. When a wheel approached, carrying her clay pot. The conversation quieted slightly, but as she knelt to fill her pot, the voices rose again, deliberately loud enough for her to hear. "Have you been listening to Ngozi lately?" one woman said, scrubbing a wrapper against a stone. "She speaks in riddles all the time now." Another woman laughed. "Yes, always talking about roofs and things that crawl. What does she mean?" An older woman, known for her wisdom, spoke thoughtfully. "You young ones do not understand. When someone cannot speak a truth directly, they wrap it in proverbs. Ngozi is trying to tell us something." "But what?" the first woman asked. The older woman lowered her voice, but not low enough. "I think she knows a secret about someone. Something hidden. Maybe something on a roof, where people keep things they do not want found." Awil's hands froze on her water pot. Her heart began to pound so loudly she was sure everyone could hear it. "On a roof?" another woman questioned. "Who hides things on roofs?" The older woman shrugged. "Someone who has a very important secret. If I want to discover my husband's hidden truth, I would look where he thinks no one can reach. The roof is a perfect hiding place." The women's conversation continued, but Awil heard nothing more. Her mind was spinning with one thought. The roof. The roof. Could it be possible? Could her snake skin be hidden so close all this time, right above her head? That entire day felt like the longest day of her life. She cooked mechanically, her hands moving without thought. She smiled when required, but her mind was far away. She waited impatiently for night to come. She waited for the village to sleep. She waited for her chance. When darkness finally fell and the moon climbed into the sky, Awil lay on her mat pretending to sleep. She listened carefully to the sounds around her. Okoro's breathing became deep and steady. The compound grew quiet. Even the usual night sounds seemed to fade away. Moving as silently as water flowing over stones, Awil crept from her sleeping mat. Her feet made no sound on the earth. Years of moving through rivers had taught her how to be invisible, how to move without disturbing the world around her. She approached Okoro's old hut, the one where it first brought her that terrible night. The roof was low, within her reach. Her hands shook as she pulled herself up. The thatch felt rough against her palms. She reached into the rafters, her heart pounding like a war drum. At first, she felt nothing but dried grass and dust. Disappointment began to sink into her chest like a stone. But then her fingers brushed against something different. The moment Awil's fingers touched the snake's skin, recognition shot through her body like lightning. She knew it instantly. She would know it anywhere. This was her true self, her real identity, her stolen life. With trembling hands, she pulled it from the rafters. In the moonlight, the scales shimmered with the same ancient power she remembered. Tears began to stream down her face. After so long, after so many tears, after so much suffering, finally, she pressed the skin to her chest and closed her eyes. The moment the skin touched her body, everything changed. The sky darkened suddenly, as if a great shadow had passed over the moon. Clouds gathered from nowhere, swirling overhead. The wind began to howl through the village, shaking the huts and bending the trees. Power surged through Awil's body in waves. Her human form began to shift and change. Her eyes turned gold, glowing in the darkness like twin suns. Her tongue flickered out, tasting the air with ancient senses. The memories came flooding back, clear and strong. Her life in the deep waters. Her sisters dancing under waterfalls. The freedom of moving without limits or boundaries. And then the memory of that terrible night when everything was stolen, when Okoro took her skin, when he took her choice, when he took her entire future for nothing but his own pride. Rage filled her heart. Not the small anger that humans feel, but the wrath of an ancient spirit wronged, the fury of nature itself. The transformation was complete. Awil's lower body became serpent, massive and powerful. Her upper body remained human, but covered in shimmering scales. She was magnificent, terrifying, beautiful, dangerous. Inside his hut, Okoro woke suddenly. Something felt wrong. The air was thick with power and danger. He sat up and looked around in confusion. Then he heard it, a voice that made his bones turn to water. Okoro. It was a wheel's voice, but changed. Deeper, ancient, filled with the fury of years of captivity. He crawled to his door and looked out. What he saw made him fall backward in terror. A wheel stood in the center of the compound, her serpent form coiled beneath her, her golden eyes fixed on him. "Come out, hunter," she commanded. "Face what you have done." The wind howled louder. In other huts, villagers were waking, hearing the commotion, but none dared to come outside. They could feel the power in the air. Something ancient and angry was loose. A wheel's eyes blazed. "For years you kept me prisoner. You stole my skin. You stole my life. You chained me with lies and called it love. Now, the river takes its due." She moved toward Ngozi's hut with terrible purpose. Inside, Ngozi cowered against the wall, finally understanding the full weight of her cruelty. She had mocked a spirit, tormented one of the ancient ones. And now, payment was due. The night filled with one final scream. Then silence. A wheel slithered toward the forest, toward the river that called her home. As she disappeared, her voice echoed one last time. "Let all who hear this remember, beauty stolen brings only sorrow. Love forced becomes a curse. And secrets kept under roofs will always climb down and speak." The village of Umuagba learned that night what the elders had always known. The spirits watch. The river remembers. And those who trap what should be free will harvest only grief. Okoro lived the rest of his days in shame, forever remembering the price of his pride. And sometimes, when the moon is full, villagers still see a golden-eyed serpent near the river, guarding the boundary between the human world and the ancient mysteries that should never be disturbed. The end.